There's a gaping hole in our national school curriculum. And I'm not talking about our abysmal failure to have students meet basic numeracy and literacy standards by the time they leave high school. We've spent more than a decade teaching our kids that everyone has basic human rights, to treat people with the same respect, whether straight or gay or Asian or animal kin, and how we must protect the environment from ourselves at any cost. But I'm talking about something much more fundamental. Something that impacts not only the way you see the world around you as you grow up, but how you interact with ideas instead of personalities, and how to think critically enough that you can arrive at something that vaguely resembles objective truth when you take on new information. I'm talking about media studies. When I came through high school, media studies was offered as a single elective unit in year 11 or 12, and it wasn't exactly filling out classrooms or exam halls. But understanding the media and the impact it has on not just yourself, but the world around you has never been more important. Because we live in a time where mainstream media channels like television and newspapers have become so partisan, or at least perceived to be, that we're more likely to trust a random comment on Facebook or an offhand tweet than a story by an actual reporter from a media organisation that we don't like. Accelerating concentration of media ownership in fewer and fewer hands has seen a reduction in the diversity of mainstream sources, but grassroots and gonzo-style journalism by people on YouTube like Tim Pool is growing geometrically. There are options out there today that most of us will never even know exist unless introduced by someone trustworthy. And from where I stand, that is the biggest issue with media education, at least in Australia. While many of us do go on to study liberal arts at university and develop those higher critical thinking skills, there's a massive proportion that don't, because, well, you wind up working as your own intern for YouTube. But this stuff's too important to be restricted to those with high ATAR scores that happen to want to study politics or communications, because it molds the very fabric of our realities. From the public servants in Canberra, to the tenured academics at universities, to the people holding the stop sign at the roadworks on the Monash. Seeking out sources of information with which you fundamentally disagree is the only way to get a wholesome grasp on the fast-changing world in which we live. Way too many of us have retreated back into our bubbles of comfort, our echo chambers and our safe spaces. When even the leftist feminist Germaine Greer, an internationally renowned academic and women's rights advocate, is shunned from the left-leaning Brisbane Writers' Festival for her controversial past, like daring to point out that an inappropriate come-on is not the same thing as rape, then these so-called festivals of dangerous ideas are nothing but a caricature of the values they purport to espouse. I mean, this closeted identity politics has deplatformed and devalued the opinions of anyone deemed not to be safely within a rapidly shrinking Overton window, and whether as a side effect or straight up intention, is actively pursuing the revival of apartheid-like race-based segregation, with policies like Indigenous-only computer rooms at the Queensland University of Technology, or white left-wing professors hounded off the most liberal campus in the United States for showing up to do their jobs on a supposedly voluntary day of absence. The left, which once stood for lifting the working class out of poverty and ending racialised practices, and actively fought for that through the civil rights movement, has flipped and now champions this racialised narrative. I mean, they don't even agree with the principles of free speech anymore. So God help you if you happen to espouse classical egalitarian principles as a reporter or academic. Your comrades are coming for you, and you will be shunned. Newspapers like The Guardian, which I read frequently and is only available online in Australia, are leading this charge, not only against classical liberal values, but also against the left-wing egalitarianism of old. And a perfect example of this, and the web of an echo chamber that our best journalists happen to be caught in, was a recent piece by economics editor Greg Jericho in the Aussie edition of the paper. And with all his resources as a journalist for a credible and prominent publication, even he no longer reads outside the square. Apparently, the decision by Coles to offer its reusable bags for free is a symptom of, and I'm actually quoting here, how climate change has utterly destroyed the minds of conservatives, We'll skip over the fact that apparently only people on the right get annoyed at having to pay for something that was once offered as a free convenience by a multi-billion-dollar company, and go straight to his vile disdain for those who might be of a different political stripe to his good self. From the very first paragraph, his words are dripping with elitist contempt. It's a recurring theme, actually. And of course, The Guardian's top pick comments claim it's one of the best articles ever written, elaborating on one reader's deepest disappointment with the fact that the Australian electorate seems so accepting of this poor state of affairs. And of course, never a place to facilitate militant left-wing extremism, these top comments even ask why there's been no large population rallies in our capital cities, against a supermarket, giving customers shopping bags. Can you feel the contempt for your pathetic inferiority yet? This economics writer's so damn ignorant of the actual economics involved and simultaneously enthralled with get-up style prejudice and crusading that he completely overlooks the fact that these big businesses will profit significantly from this plastic bag ban. Something I recently pointed out. It's not really about climate change, it's about conservation, apparently. The real reason customers are upset? Conservatives have been rendered so bereft by climate change that anything carrying even the slightest taint of environmental impact is viewed with distrust. I mean, the reverse couldn't possibly be true about progressive stalwarts like yourself, could it, Greg? And finally, we arrive at the climax of his brilliantly self-centered argument, because we're now at the point where there are barely any conservative commentators worth listening to. There it is in plain English. Nobody who thinks differently to me is good enough to be read, heard, or watched. Now, I'm pretty sure Greg's thought this to be the case all his life, but not only is it just not true, it shows how little effort he actually makes to read and listen and watch content outside of his comfort zone. Paul Kelly, Ben Shapiro, Brendan O'Neill, Peter Van Onselen, Neil Mitchell, I could go on. Although many of these commentators don't describe themselves as explicitly conservative, and honestly neither do I, they do espouse ideas with which conservatives will gladly and honestly interact. Andrew Bolt is not the only right-wing commentator, mate, and Tony Abbott's not representative of the word conservative, no matter how hard The Guardian might try to paint this picture, and they try pretty damn hard. The antidote to this childish covering of your ears and screaming la 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 is to chase something you disagree with, to read as widely as you have the time for. Don't get trapped into being loyal to a particular publication, media outlet, or even ideology like Greg Jericho, listening to only what you want to hear. I mean, this is as important for progressives as it is for conservatives and liberals. You can look down your nose at the people who read the Herald Sun all you want, but you're just perpetuating division rather than actually finding a solution. And for those on the left, so intolerant of opposing views you won't even let leftists like Bob Carr speak at your Writers' Festival, I just want to thank you from the very bottom of my heart for driving these influential intellectuals straight into the arms of liberty, where we want our ideas and prejudices challenged. They'll make fantastic warriors for freedom of speech, and many on the right will now pay them more attention, in turn feeding their souls and rounding them out as intelligent, politically engaged people. So maybe think twice before you shun the next Dave Rubin or Jermaine Greer. We'll chase that debate every day of the week, but you're the ones who will miss them when they're gone. I mean, Hillary sure did well without those downtrodden blue-collar working class people, didn't she?